Tonight we're going to have a very interesting conversation about the AI race and the future of innovation. And I'm lucky tonight because I have some amazing speakers on the panel. So let me introduce you to Mademoiselle Charlotte Foucteau, who is the CEO of Teleperformance Greece. We have Mr. Alvin Graylin, who is a well-known author, as well as the chairman at the Virtual World Society. And of course, we have Mr. Max Nikias, who is President Emeritus and also a professor at the California Southern University.
Thank you.
I would like to start with Mrs. Foucteau tonight. I'll start from a very, very famous report. So the Draghi report basically mentioned that we must urgently embrace transformative technologies in Europe if we want to maintain our competitiveness, let's say. So I was wondering, how do you see AI reshaping, especially the customer experience and digital services economy? And just tell me a little bit more about what do you think will happen in Greece?
Yeah. So let's start by defining a little bit what is CX. What do we have in common right now in this room? If there was one thing that we have in common, is the fact that we are all clients. We are all customers. So imagine right now the importance of technology into this industry of customer experience. It's going to be wild, and it's going to touch all of us into this experience. So what I do believe is that AI and technology in general is actually reinventing all this CX journey. Let me give you an example. Who maybe lost their flight yesterday? Nobody in this room, but there were maybe many of the forums that had to be reorganized. That was that. So get into the customer at the time where you are losing your flight. What is that you need into an emotional moment right now? You need personalization. So one of the big things that AI is going to bring is the personalization of each one of our interactions. So you're not a mass anymore. You become way more a person. And that's a part of where the CX is going to be transformed from the AI. The second piece is proactiveness. So what do we do when we have an issue into the CX industry? We pick up the phone, we send an email, but that's a reactive thing. What AI is going to transform is that it's going to bring a proactive way of solving customer issue. So we're going to really see a huge shift and change into the industry. Going and zooming into Greece. What is Greece about? The two biggest industries in Greece are services industries. Let's think about tourism. What is tourism in Greece? Maybe made by medium and small businesses. Imagine now that AI is transforming those small businesses, giving them insight, data insight on how they're going to create value back to their customer. So that's going to play a huge role into the economy. So just to close, AI, of course, like last year, I think most of the forum were about AI. Now it's really about the transformation on how AI is going to create value in our life. And let me close by telling something that I like all of us to remember. We should only talk about innovation in CX or wherever. And technology is that is useful for people. Useful for us as customers, useful in our job. The moment the technology stops to be useful, we shouldn't talk about innovation anymore and rechange the discussion. So, yes, it's going to make a lot of change.
Okay. And you mentioned a little bit about the balance that needs to exist between automations and data, and also more of an empathetic approach to the customer. I'm wondering, how do you think that the European regulatory framework will influence this balance?
Yeah. So let me tackle this question into two things. The first thing is we talk about empathy and technology. I think in a world where you have so many options, what is going to be the differentiator are those human skills. So the difference is not going to be anymore about the technology. You know, all those big discussions on how fast we get models, how fast we get technology. No. The real value is going to come into the CX industry, into the emotional intelligence that we can bring into our companies. And I would like to invite everyone, when we talk about AI, let's talk about what we call AI as well. And in TP, in teleperformance, what we have found being the best mix is the AI with the AI. AI meaning emotional intelligence. And when you manage to have both balance, then the magic happens. And that goes to your question, Angeliki, around Europe and the Draghi report, which is pointing us on making sure that we have a technology bringing human centricity. Going back to what I just said, innovation are for human. We need to serve human. So this is key on how we will make sure that we have this human centricity technology coming into our organization, how we make sure that we prepare the next generation, not only about the technology skills, but about the emotional skills, about the human skills as well, for which, for me, we don't talk about enough right now. That goes with the technology as well. Regulation. So important. So we are talking a lot about Europe right now, or with what is happening outside with the commercial war that is going on. We are known in Europe for our compliance. We have the EU AI Act right now, which is one of the first global legal framework that we will have around AI. Let's just be really conscious that we are not creating challenging, that we delay innovation as well in Europe. We need to be stronger than ever today in Europe and becoming an innovation center. So we need to protect, again, going back to the human centricity, and that's a big part of the EU AI Act that we have today, on now making sure that all the new AIs going outside are protective about the human right, but at the same time that we make sure that we let Europe be innovative and we don't fall down onto all the bureaucracy of compliance and regulation.
Thank you. And because you mentioned a lot humans and emotional intelligence, I just wanted to ask you a more practical, let's say, question. How do you, and I know you're really interested in that, so how do you try to upskill and prepare your workforce for what is coming? Because technology and innovation are coming really fast and are changing now extremely fast. So how do you help your people keep up?
I'm going to maybe surprise you, but the first thing that we do is training on emotional intelligence. What you hear outside, and it is a priority, don't take me wrong. And we're going to talk about, of course, we need to train people on the digital literacy, and we need to make them being able to live with that technology. But think a little bit. We will be the first generations of leaders, not only leading humans. We have the first generation of supervisors and managers inside the CX industries that don't only have a team of experts to handle, but they also have a team of both. They have a machine learning trainings ongoing. So how do we prepare the management team of tomorrow, not only having to deal with humans? So we need to keep this human, emotional intelligence, and all the skills around humanity as what is first into our agenda. Then, of course, you need to train on digital literacy. We heard in previous panels that there is still paper across many organizations, I think it's time that we remove paper and that we bring up to speed all the generation within some of the organizations. The third thing is, how do we prepare people to those new type of career? Today, TP Greece is around 12,000 people. Into those 12,000 people already, we see new careers. One of the new careers is, and we have around more than 1,000 trainers for machine learning. What are those trainers doing? They are making sure that those machines are actually being fit by humans to protect risk. So the point is not only preparing and upskilling around what is already here, but already thinking ahead of what is coming next and preparing them for careers that doesn't even exist today. So it's a set of things, again, just to close, it's around those human skills that are going to be more and more important, making sure that nobody's left behind, even for those that have way more difficulty to catch up on what is going, making sure that everybody knows how to work with the new tools coming your way to be successful.
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing the business perspective in our conversation tonight. I would like to ask a couple of questions. I would like to take a little bit on the academia perspective now, if you don't mind, Mr. Nikias. So you're someone who is really deeply embedded in academia, but also in innovation. And I wanted to ask you, how do you think that the universities will shape the AI development from now on? What is going to be the role?
Well, universities have been doing fundamental research in what we call today AI for the last 40 years. And so it's not new to the university environment doing research in this area. What has really accelerated and the innovation, and we reached the point that we talk about the AI revolution, which many refer to, and in my opinion, rightly so, is the new enlightenment movement of humanity. It's the technology innovation behind the brains that drive all AI algorithms, and that's the advances that have been made in the area of semiconductor chips. Because now we have the computing power to really develop AI systems and implement them in real time. And we as humans to interact with them naturally. There were experiments in university laboratories doing that even 20 years ago, but the computing was really slow. And that's why you couldn't bring a lot of these applications into the commercial environment. So universities do play a role, and not only in innovation, but in my opinion, they have a dual role. The second role is that universities educate the brain power that this revolution needs and is going to need in the future. So one is the education, and the other one is the creation of new knowledge in this area.
And since you are really aware of the US system way more than all we are, I guess that a role, the fact that somehow in the US, the collaboration of academia, the public sector, and the private sector really worked. And I guess it really supported also the growth of those technologies inside the US.
Right. No, it's true. There is always a partnership and a collaboration between the government, between the private sector and industry with the universities. It's never perfect. There are ups and downs in these relationships. Nothing is new here, but it's there. And overall, it has been very productive and very beneficial to the country and to society.
Now, I observe that slowly some grants are being cut off or are in danger, like the one that was cut off of Colombia a few weeks ago. I'm wondering how this might affect or not this advancement of technology.
Yeah, one minor correction. It's not a cut, it's a freeze for other reasons.
Okay, thank you.
And everybody hopes it's a temporary freeze, right? Incidents like that did happen in the past as well.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not anything new. And to me, those are temporary. There is university research. The government and Congress will continue funding it. I have been a professor at the university for the last 45 plus years, and I have to tell you that there were cycles that we did face severe budget cuts, including the early 1990s during the Clinton administration, because of the defense cutbacks. That was the end of the Cold War, and therefore there was no more emphasis, at least not as much, supporting defense funding. So, but those partnerships between government and universities and private industry, they're going to continue.
Good. So one last thought, a little bit away from that part. So AI race is going very, very fast, and it affects lots of regional powers. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about those regional powers or superpowers. Do you think that some countries or regions are more equipped, let's say, to dominate, and why is this?
Well, the reality is that there are nations that are more equipped because they have contributed in the development of this innovation than others. This is not new. It has always happened throughout history of humanity, right? You had certain regions that they have much more advanced civilization than other regions. So that's not a surprise. When it comes to AI, as I said earlier, being an electrical engineer, I will talk a little bit about it, is that the semiconductor chips technology is the major driver, is the brain behind this revolution. And therefore, if we carefully look at the supply chain of the very advanced semiconductor chips for the development today, no single nation controls the supply chain from A to Z. There is, of course, an effort to do that, but no single nation does. And I'm talking about the very advanced chips. So if you look at the supply chain, the European Union countries play a role here, South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and of course, United States. And I would add Israel on this. But when it comes to the very, very advanced chips, less than 14 nanometers size of transistors, China has not been part of it. And that's why there is the tension and the restrictions imposed by the first Trump administration. They were accelerated 4 years under the Biden administration, and now you're going to see even more restrictions again. So in other words, this is very bipartisan in the United States. When it went through the Senate, the votes were 92-0. For any other issue we don't agree, it's 51-49. But this one, there is an agreement, bipartisan. So these restrictions are the ones that, in my opinion, they're going to be there. And even in this economic forum, I said a year ago, which was under the Biden administration, that the decoupling when it comes to the supply chain, it has already been in the works. That we are migrating into two solar systems, where one is China, the other one is the United States, and then you have this two different supply chains. Currently, it's more advanced chips are with the Western democracies. Now, I wouldn't rule China out, okay, because they have very talented people and they're trying to develop the technology to be able to develop advanced chips, but that remains to be seen.
Okay, thank you. And since we're in Greece, do you think that somehow Greece can play a bigger role in that, or that it affects us in a different way than anyone else?
I think Greece has a big role to play. I think that when it comes to software development, already based on what I read and conversations that I have, there is a development of a technology industry, especially in the area of software and AI applications. And even in the area of semiconductor chips, educating the talent that this industry needs. So Greece does have a role to play, and it does have top universities in this area. I'm a proud graduate of the Metsovian Polytechnic.
Great. Actually, what you mentioned about talent is very interesting, because Sequoia mentioned that Athens is actually a huge hub for great talent in AI.
Right.
So this might be also like competitive advantage, let's say.
If I may add one more thing, if we ask the question, what is the biggest threat that this AI revolution is facing? The biggest threat is not China and it's not anything else. It's a shortage of talent. What we are talking about here, it's a new revolution that requires very well-educated people to drive it in the area of engineering, in the area of sciences, in the area of applied physics, and in the area of computer science. In other words, and part of my expression, you cannot bullshit yourself around it. You need talented people, and there is a shortage of talent in this area. We need more students to get university degrees in these disciplines if we want our region and our country to be a key player in this area in the future.
Okay. Threat and an opportunity. That's always go together. Yeah.
That's what I tell high school kids.
Thank you very much. I would like this is very interesting actually, because Mr. Graylin has a very, very good perspective of Asia and US, which is a quite unique combination, right? So you've seen this AI arm race from the beginning, and I wanted to ask you, how do you think that this race is shaping not just national competitiveness, but also the global stability right now?
Yeah, and as you said, I've actually spent about half my career in China, half in the US, and I actually started in semiconductors with Intel and IBM, and I've been working on AI for 30 plus years. But I think there's actually a very dangerous situation we are in right now. In particular, even to call this an AI race is positioning the world to go into a path where we are making an increasingly dangerous world. Of all the technologies that we have created over the last thousands of years, this may be one that has a different type of a trajectory than other technologies. In the past, almost all technology we created had been tools that gives an advantage to one group over another and allows you to create some dominance over somebody else. We are potentially creating a technology that advances all areas of our lives and can take us from a world of scarcity to potentially a world of abundance. But we are now turning it into a weapon against each other and making it, whether it's a race between companies or a race between countries. And in some cases, specifically weaponizing this technology to give advantage of countries to maintain a dominance or to create dominance over other people. And I think that's a very dangerous thing to do, because this technology at some point may become intelligent enough and capable enough to have its own autonomy. And whether as an autonomous weapon to take humans out of the chain, or ability for it to take over work so that it replaces a large number of humans, or having the ability to create other types of threats like cyber weapons, new viruses, new chemical weapons, things that can attack our energy grid. I think there's a lot of other dangers that are going to potentially be coming to our world if this technology gets into the wrong hands. And I agree that the danger is not China or the US. The bigger danger is actually advanced AI getting into the hands of rogue actors, of terrorist groups, of people with special agendas, because this magnifies the capabilities of those individuals or groups significantly beyond what's possible today. Right? Usually, rogue groups are a small group of people somewhere with limited resources, and they can do limited damage. Unfortunately, with this, a single person or a small group can have the capability of an army of Einsteins in their backyard or in their basement. And that can create different types of asymmetric risk to the world. And this actually is a reason why nations should actually work together versus against each other. Because the only way to defend against the asymmetric risk of a rogue actor is actually to have clear communication between the intelligence groups of the various state actors. Right. State actors are actually less likely to use this technology advantage versus each other because just like in the mutual assured destruction doctrine, there is somebody to retaliate against. So they know that if I've used this to maybe take down somebody's power grid or to attack their system, somebody will find out and somebody will attack me back. But a rogue actor does not have that fear because they don't care if they die as long as they achieve their goals. So I think we're living in a world that the equations that used to work in the past are changing. And one of the other risks that we haven't talked about is actually job displacement risk and the instability in society that will come. And that is not a thing that we want to race to. And right now, when everybody is trying to get first to advanced AI or AGI, they are forgetting about the societal ramifications of the dislocation of jobs, the instability that will be created when 10, 20, 30, 50% of the labor force becomes displaced. And very few countries are actually taking this into account and preparing these social safety nets and the financial safety nets and the reskilling systems and the UBI platforms to enable a smooth transition when this happens. And it will happen because AI is advancing at such a pace that pretty much all the labs in the world are agreeing that within the next 5 years or so, we will get to AGI. And what that means is pretty much when you get AGI, every single white-collar job in the world is at risk.
Sure.
Right? And when you put AGI and you tie it to some kind of a robotic system over then probably in the next 5 to 10 years, then almost all manual labor will be at risk. Right? So we need to be thinking about how do we put in systems to prevent an economic meltdown and a societal meltdown when these things happen. And very few people are talking and preparing for that eventual future.
Taking in mind exactly that, but also the pace of the advancement, how important is it to establish soon global standards around AI, and what mechanisms you think that could work, especially in a world that is so different and like so many values at the same time?
Yes, so this is exactly the reason we need to be creating like a CERN for AI type program versus national sovereign programs. Right now, the fad is to say every country needs to have their own AI based on their own data, based on their own values, and you essentially create 193 versions of this AI, all duplicating efforts and taking the limited resources we have in chips to try to build the same thing. And what we're finding is almost all models are converging to the same point. They're all within 2, 3, 4% of capabilities of each other. So creating 193 versions of this is not the most efficient use of our limited resources. The other dangerous thing is when you create independent versions that are based on your culture, your language, your religion, what that is saying is that I am the good guy, and every one of those, the other 192 are all bad guys. And I need to win, they need to lose, because we live in a zero-sum game, right? Zero-sum world. This is what we are training AI systems today when we create sovereign AI. When we put the data of all the world nations together, all the religions, all of the peoples, all the languages, we then create an AI that takes into everybody's perspective into account. And that's what we need, is when that happens, then the AI will say, how can I create a universal utility function that benefits everyone instead of a single small subset, which is what the current system and the current model is doing. And it's a very dangerous thing, the path that we are on, because not only are we creating less intelligent systems because they have incomplete data sets, we are innately biasing them against each other. And what happens is that we will, the collateral damage of this is that human race will suffer, right? One group may have a temporary lead, but there is no winning. There is no winning this race. I think this is the key that most people don't realize. And this is the myth of somebody winning is why people are having this race. But when people realize, or when hopefully the leaders in the world realizes that there is no winning, and the only way to win is not to play. This is kind of the War Games movie from the 1980s, and I think there was a lot of truth in what they're saying. And particularly when we are so close to potentially getting a technology that can solve the problems that have been plaguing our society for thousands of years, whether it's energy or health or climate or education and food. All of these things can be, we are within 5 years of solving all of these problems if we work together.
Yeah, please.
If I may add what Alvin so eloquently explained, it's AI ethics is going to be a very, very important topic. It is now and in the future. And the private sector corporations, especially the large ones, have taken that very seriously. At least they appear so. And they have created also, they try to create the environment, the culture that of responsible AI. That's the expression they use.
Well, I think a lot of them, like you say, they appear so. I think that that's the illusion is that there is the appearance that they're prioritizing ethics and truth and responsibility. But when at the same time, when companies Anthropic, who is supposed to be the poster boy of safety, is also working with the Defense Department to create weapons, how can you say that you are ethical and trying to do good for the world when you're using the same technology to create defense technology? And how can you say this when publicly the CEO of Anthropic is saying, US must win against China, and we are now working with the Defense Department to help US win, and China can never be in the lead, and we need to do all of these things to cut the legs off of other countries. I think that's a very dangerous game to play, even though I know you say that China's behind on the semiconductor side, but they already have achieved 7 nanometer production in fairly good quantity. They just announced that they now have EUV machines that will soon allow them to get to 5 or 3 or nanometer technology. So they're probably 2 to 3 years behind Taiwan. And Taiwan officially, according to most of the world's records, is actually a part of China, and it's only 100 miles from China, whereas it is 5,000 miles away from the US. So if there was a conflict, the probability of US winning versus China on that particular front is very small.
Right.
So we really need to be very careful about creating these kind of geopolitical conflicts around a technology when cooperating is actually the only solution that does everybody good, instead of trying to win something that cannot be won.
Thank you very much, everyone. This is a really interesting conversation, and I know there are different views in this matter. I think that we do need to stop here because I think the PM is about to go on stage right now. The Prime Minister, sorry, the sword, it's what we usually use. So thank you very much, everyone.